The Inheritance. Act 1. The Summons. My name is Julian Whitmore, 36 years old, investment banker at Grayson Capital in Chicago. Self-made, I like to say, though that's not entirely true. Nobody's truly self-made. We're all composites of the people who raised us and the people who abandoned us. I grew up poor in Roxbury, Boston. Section 8 housing. Free lunch program. Mom working 2 jobs to keep the lights on. But I was good at math, really good. Got a full ride to MIT. Graduated top of my class. Wall Street came calling. 14-hour days, 80-hour weeks. Climbing, proving, building a life where the past couldn't find me. 10 years ago, I cut ties with my family. Not that there was much to cut, just Mom, and she was already fading from early-onset Alzheimer's. I placed her in a care facility, paid the bills, visited twice a year. It was easier that way, easier than watching her forget who I was. Easier than remembering who I'd been. Until last Tuesday, when the past called anyway. I was in my office, 40th floor, panoramic view of Lake Michigan, the kind of office that says, "You made it," when my assistant buzzed. "Mr. Whitmore, there's a call from a law firm in Boston. They say it's urgent." Boston. I hadn't been back in 3 years. "Put them through." The voice on the line was crisp, professional, expensive. "Mr. Whitmore, this is Margaret Hastings from Hastings, Caldwell & Price. I'm calling regarding the estate of your biological father, Richard Whitmore. He passed away 3 weeks ago. You're named in the will. We need you to come to Whitmore House in Marblehead for the reading, this Friday at 2 p.m. I almost hung up. Richard Whitmore, the man who left when I was 4, the man my mother refused to talk about, the man who existed only as an absence, a missing signature on permission slips, an empty chair at graduation, a question I'd learned to stop asking. "I'm not interested," I said, already reaching to disconnect. "Mr. Whitmore, you're one of the primary beneficiaries. The estate is substantial, 7 figures, conservatively. You really should be present." 7 figures. That stopped me. Not because I needed it, I'd done well for myself, but because it was absurd. A man I'd met once in my life was leaving me 7 figures? "Why me?" I asked. "That's something you'll need to discuss with the family," Margaret said carefully. "Friday, 2 p.m., Whitmore House. I'll email you the address and flight recommendations. I strongly advise you to come." Before I could argue, she hung up. I sat staring at my phone, then at the skyline, Chicago glittering in the late afternoon sun. My life here was clean, compartmentalized. I had my work, my apartment, my routine. I had Tess, my girlfriend of 2 years, an investigative journalist who understood my need for boundaries because she had her own. I called her. I got a call from Boston. "Your mom okay?" Tess asked immediately. She knew about the Alzheimer's. "Not about Mom, about my father, the one I've never met." "The one who abandoned you?" "That's the one. Apparently he died. Left me money. A lot of it." There was a pause, then. "And you're thinking about going?" "I'm thinking about not going." "Julian, you're a terrible liar. You're already looking at flights." I glanced at my computer screen. She was right. I'd pulled up airline websites without even realizing it. "It's just money," I said. "It's not about money and you know it. It's about why. Why now? Why you? After all these years?" "Maybe he felt guilty." "Rich people don't feel guilty. They feel entitled. If he's leaving you money, there's a reason. And you need to know what it is." That night I couldn't sleep. I pulled up Google, searched for Richard Whitmore, found obituaries, business articles, society page mentions. Richard Whitmore, 68, founder and CEO of Whitmore Shipping, one of the oldest maritime transport companies in New England. Survived by his wife Catherine and 3 children, Lillian, Edward, and Grace. Donations in his name to various charities. Service held at Old North Church. No mention of me. No mention of my mother, as if we'd never existed. But I existed enough to be in his will. Why? At 3 a.m. I made a decision. I booked a flight to Boston. Not for the money, not even for closure. But because after 36 years of building a life where I didn't need anyone, I wanted to know why a stranger decided I was worth remembering. I landed at Logan on Thursday evening, rented a car, black sedan, anonymous, and drove the coastal highway north. Autumn in New England is a cliché for a reason. The trees were on fire. The ocean was steel gray and endless. And Marblehead, God, Marblehead looked like it had been designed by someone who'd read too many Nathaniel Hawthorne novels. Old colonial houses, winding cobblestone streets, sailboats bobbing in the harbor. The kind of place where families have summer homes and winter homes and think that's normal. Whitmore House sat on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic. I could see it from half a mile away. 3 stories of weathered stone and dark wood, with turrets that looked like they belonged in a Gothic novel. The kind of house that says, "We've been here since the Mayflower, and we'll be here long after you're gone." I parked at the iron gate, stared at the house through the windshield, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Small, inadequate. Like the poor kid from Roxbury wearing his best Goodwill clothes to a party where everyone else wore tailored suits. I shook it off. That kid didn't exist anymore. I'd left him behind with the past. A woman in her 60s opened the door before I could knock. Thin, elegant, with iron gray hair pulled into a chignon, and the kind of posture that suggests decades of deportment classes at finishing schools whose names have Roman numerals. "Julian Whitmore?" she said. "Yes." "I'm Margaret Hastings. We spoke on the phone. Come in." The interior looked like a museum curated by someone with too much money and too much time. Persian rugs that probably cost more than my first car. Oil paintings of stern ancestors whose eyes followed you across the room. A grand staircase that curved like something out of Gone with the Wind. The air smelled like old books, furniture polish, and the faint salt tang of the ocean. "The reading is tomorrow at 2, Margaret said, leading me through a hallway lined with portraits. "But I wanted to speak with you privately first. The family, they're complicated." "I don't even know who the family is," I said. Margaret stopped at a door, hand on the brass handle. "Your father remarried 5 years after your mother. He had 3 children with his second wife, Catherine, Lillian, now 42, a trauma surgeon at Massachusetts General. Edward, 39, who runs Whitmore Shipping, and Grace, 34, an artist. So I have half-siblings. Yes, none of whom knew you existed until the will was read last week." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "They didn't know about me?" "Your father never mentioned you. Not once in 30 years of marriage. When your name appeared in the will, it was a considerable shock." "To them or to you?" "To everyone," Margaret said carefully. She opened the door into a sitting room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. Poured 2 glasses of scotch from a crystal decanter. Handed me one. "Julian, I need to tell you something before tomorrow. The will is unusual. Your father left specific instructions that the inheritance can only be claimed if all 4 of you, Lillian, Edward, Grace, and you, agree to certain conditions." "What conditions?" "You'll hear them tomorrow during the formal reading. But I wanted to warn you, This isn't a simple estate division. Richard designed it to force the four of you together, to make you interact. Why? Margaret took a sip of her scotch, considering. I represented Richard for 20 years. He was brilliant, manipulative, and obsessed with two things: legacy and control. He couldn't control his death, but he could control what happened after. Whatever he's planned, it's a test. A test for what? That, Margaret said, meeting my eyes, is what you'll need to figure out. She left me alone in the sitting room. I stood at the window, looking out at the Atlantic, dark and endless, waves crashing against the rocks below. And I thought about the man who'd built all this, who'd left my mother and me with nothing, who'd raised 3 children in luxury while I ate ramen and worked night shifts to pay for textbooks. And I wondered, what kind of man leaves his son out in the cold for 36 years, then drags him back for a game? I didn't have an answer, but I knew I'd find out tomorrow. I tried calling Tess, but she didn't pick up, probably on deadline. So I texted, "I'm here. House is insane. Feels like I'm in a gothic novel. Wish you were here." She texted back 10 minutes later, "You got this. Remember, rich people are just poor people with better tailors. Don't let them intimidate you." I smiled despite myself. Tess always knew what to say. That night, I barely slept. I walked the grounds, the gardens, the cliffs, the old boathouse. Every corner of the property screamed money, history, permanence. And I couldn't stop thinking, this could have been mine, if Richard had stayed, if he'd chosen me. But he hadn't, and I'd built my life anyway. So why did being here hurt so much? Act 2, the reading. The next morning I met my siblings. Lillian arrived first. Tall, late 40s, but looked younger, with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun and the kind of sharp features that belong on classical statues. She wore scrubs under a wool coat, clearly came straight from the hospital. She found me in the library, staring at a shelf of leather-bound first editions that probably cost more than my college tuition. "Julian," she said, extending her hand. Her grip was firm, clinical. "I wish we were meeting under different circumstances." "Did you know about me?" I asked. No point dancing around it. "No, not until last week when Margaret read the will." Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "Our father was private." "Private," I repeated. "That's one word for it." "He was complicated," Lillian said carefully. "Brilliant, difficult, distant. He loved us, I think, in his way, but he wasn't warm, and clearly, he kept secrets." "Like having another son?" "Like having another son," she agreed. We stood in uncomfortable silence. "I'm sorry," Lillian said finally. "I can't imagine what this is like for you. Walking into a house that should have been partly yours. Meeting siblings you didn't know existed. It's surreal." "Yeah," I said. "That's one word for it." Edward came next. I heard him before I saw him, heavy footsteps, the jangle of car keys. He appeared in the doorway of the library, stocky, mid-30s, with the easy confidence of someone who's never worried about money. Khakis and a button-down with the sleeves rolled up. The uniform of men who inherit empires. He didn't shake my hand, just nodded. "So you're the mystery heir," he said. "I'm just here for answers," I said. "Aren't we all?" He walked to the bar cart, poured himself a whiskey. Didn't offer me one. "You know what the best part of this is? I spent my entire life doing everything Dad wanted. Right schools, right degree, right job. And then he dies, and I find out there's a secret brother who gets an equal share. That's just perfect." "I didn't ask for this," I said. "None of us did," Edward shot back. But here we are, playing Dad's final game. What game? You'll see. He downed the whiskey in one gulp. Margaret likes to keep secrets until the dramatic reveal. Very on brand for this family. Grace was last. I heard her before I saw her too, humming something off-key, footsteps light on the hardwood. She appeared in paint-stained jeans, an oversized sweater with holes in the elbows, and wild curly hair that looked like it had never met a hairbrush it liked. She stopped when she saw me, stared. "You look like him," she said. "Who?" "Dad, same eyes, same jawline, same way of standing like you're ready to bolt any second." I didn't know what to say to that. Grace walked closer, studying me like I was a painting she was trying to understand. "I'm Grace, the youngest, the artist, the disappointment." "Why disappointment?" "Because I chose paint over profit. Dad didn't approve. We didn't talk for 5 years. Then 3 months ago, he called, apologized, said he was proud of me. And then he died." Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I never got to tell him I forgave him." "I'm sorry," I said. "Are you?" she asked. "Or are you angry? Because if you are, that's okay. I'd be angry too." I looked at this woman, this stranger who was somehow my sister, and felt something crack open in my chest. "I don't know what I am," I admitted. "Then you're in the right place," Grace said. "Because none of us know what we are either." At 2 p.m., Margaret called us into the library. The 4 of us sat around a long oak table, me, Lillian, Edward, Grace, with Catherine at the head. Richard's widow. I hadn't met her yet. She was in her 60s, elegant and brittle, like porcelain that's been glued together too many times. She wore black, a dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. And her hands trembled slightly as she folded them on the table. "Thank you all for coming," Margaret said, standing at a podium with a leather folder. Richard Whitmore's will was finalized 6 months before his death. He was of sound mind and body. The will has been notarized and validated by 3 independent witnesses. I'll now read the relevant sections. She opened the folder, cleared her throat. "I, Richard Whitmore, being of sound mind, do hereby bequeath my entire estate to my children in the following manner." I noticed Catherine flinch slightly. Her children, not including me. Margaret continued. "To my children, Lillian, Edward, Grace, and Julian, I leave the entirety of my estate, valued at approximately $12 million, including Whitmore House, the family business, and all associated holdings, to be divided equally among the 4 of you. However, this inheritance is conditional." The word hung in the air like a gunshot. Edward laughed, sharp and bitter. "Of course it is." "The 4 of you must spend 1 week together at Whitmore House," Margaret read. "During this week, you will complete a series of tasks I have designed. These tasks will require cooperation, honesty, and trust. At the end of the week, if all 4 of you agree to accept the inheritance under the terms I've outlined, the estate will be divided as specified. If even one of you refuses, the entire estate will be donated to charity." Silence. "This is insane," Edward said finally. "What tasks?" Lillian asked, her voice clinical, controlled. "They're outlined in sealed envelopes," Margaret said, pulling out 4 thick cream-colored envelopes from the folder. "1 for each day. You'll open them together each morning. The tasks must be completed by midnight that day." "And if we refuse?" Grace asked quietly. "Then you forfeit the inheritance," Margaret said. "All of you. The entire estate goes to the New England Maritime Preservation Society. $12 million to preserve old boats, Edward said. That's just like Dad. Dramatic to the end. This is blackmail, Lillian said. This is your father's final wish, Catherine said quietly. It was the first time she'd spoken. Her voice was soft, worn. He wanted you together, as a family. We're not a family, Edward said, gesturing at me. 3 of us are. He's a stranger. A stranger Dad never mentioned, never acknowledged. And now he gets an equal share? How is that fair? Fair, I said, my voice harder than I intended. You want to talk about fair? I grew up in Roxbury. My mom worked 2 jobs to keep us fed. I wore second-hand clothes and ate free lunch at school while you were here in this palace. So don't talk to me about fair. Edward stood up, chair scraping. That's not my fault. It's not mine either, I shot back. I didn't ask to be here. I didn't ask for any of this. But here I am, so either we do this or we all walk away. Maybe we should walk away, Edward said. Sit down, Edward, Lillian said sharply. Both of you stop. Edward sat, but his jaw was tight. Lillian looked at me. Julian, this is as much a surprise to you as it is to us. I understand that, but we have a choice here. We can walk away and get nothing. Or we can try. 1 week, that's all. Try what? I asked. Playing house so we can collect a check? Try understanding why our father wanted this, Lillian said. I looked around the table. Catherine, silent and grieving. Edward, hostile and resentful. Grace, watching me with those artist eyes that saw too much. Lillian, the oldest, trying to hold it together. These people were strangers, but they were also pieces of a puzzle I'd been trying to solve my whole life. Fine, I said. 1 week, then we go our separate ways. Agreed, Lillian said. Edward said nothing, but he didn't leave. Grace smiled slightly. This should be interesting. Margaret nodded. The first envelope. You'll open it tomorrow morning at breakfast, 8 a.m. sharp. Until then, you're free to settle in. Your rooms have been prepared. Dinner will be served at 7. We dispersed in silence, each retreating to separate corners of the house like boxers returning to our corners. My room was on the 3rd floor, east wing, with a view of the ocean. It was bigger than my first apartment, 4-poster bed with a canopy, antique mahogany furniture, Persian rug, marble fireplace, and on the desk, a photograph in a silver frame. It was me. Age 4, standing next to a man I barely remembered, Richard Whitmore, my father. He was smiling. I was holding his hand. I'd never seen this photo before, didn't know it existed. But someone, Richard, Catherine, Margaret, had placed it here. For me. A message, or maybe a test. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at it until the sun set and the room filled with shadows. Act 3, the tasks begin. The next morning we gathered in the dining room, 8 a.m. A table set for 5, Catherine included. Coffee in silver pots. Pastries arranged artfully on china plates. And in the center, the first envelope. No one touched it. Well, Grace said finally. Should we? I'll do it, Lillian said. She picked up the envelope, broke the wax seal, and pulled out a thick card with elegant script. She read aloud. Day 1, the truth game. Each of you will share one truth about your relationship with me, Richard, that the others don't know. No lies, no omissions, no deflections. By midnight tonight, all 4 truths must be told. Failure to comply forfeits the inheritance. Edward groaned. This is therapy. Dad's making us do therapy from beyond the grave. This is manipulation, Lillian corrected. He's forcing vulnerability to create bonding. It's textbook. It's also his game, Grace said, and we agreed to play. We stared at each other across the table, four strangers bound by blood and money and a dead man's wishes. "I'll go first," Grace said, setting down her coffee cup with a soft clink. "Since I'm apparently the open book in this family." She took a breath. "Dad and I barely spoke the last 5 years of his life. I told him I didn't want his money, that I wanted to make it on my own as an artist. That success I bought with his connections wouldn't mean anything." She paused, eyes distant. "He said that was naive, that the art world didn't care about purity, that I'd come crawling back when I couldn't pay rent. We fought. I left, and we didn't talk after that." "But you did talk," I said, remembering what she'd mentioned yesterday. "3 months ago." "Yeah," Grace's voice cracked slightly. "3 months ago, he called, out of the blue. Said he'd been to one of my shows. Had been going to all of them, apparently, without me knowing. He said he was wrong, that my work was beautiful, that he was proud of me, and that he loved me even when he didn't understand me." She wiped her eyes. "I was going to call him back, tell him I forgave him, but I kept putting it off. And then he died, and I never got to say it." Silence around the table. Even Edward looked uncomfortable. "Thank you for sharing that," Lillian said finally. "Your turn," Grace said to her. Lillian's jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought she'd refuse. But then she spoke, voice carefully controlled. "Dad wanted me to take over Whitmore shipping. It was expected. The eldest child inherits the kingdom. That's how it works in families like ours." She paused. "But I didn't want the kingdom. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to save lives, not manage shipping routes and profit margins." "What did he say?" I asked. "He said medicine was a hobby for rich girls who wanted to feel important. That real work was building empires, making money, leaving a legacy." Lillian's hands were clenched on the table. "I went to med school anyway, took out loans even though I didn't need to, refused his money. He didn't come to my graduation, didn't acknowledge my residency, didn't visit when I became an attending physician." "That's 15 years, Grace said softly. 15 years, Lillian confirmed. "And then last year, he had a heart attack. Massive. They brought him into Mass General while I was on shift. I was the one who saved his life, performed the surgery, brought him back." "What did he say?" Edward asked. "After he woke up after the recovery, he looked at me and said, 'Maybe you were right about medicine.'" Lillian's voice was bitter. "That's it. That's the closest he ever came to an apology. Maybe you were right." "Jesus," Edward muttered. "My turn," Edward said after a moment. "Fine." He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed defensively. "Dad groomed me from birth to run Whitmore Shipping. Best schools, business degree from Wharton. Internships at the company every summer. I was molded, shaped, built into the perfect air." He paused. "But I hated it. Every second of it." "Then why did you do it?" Grace asked. "Because that's what you do in this family," Edward said. "You fulfill your role. You meet expectations. You don't disappoint." He laughed without humor. "You want to know what I really wanted? To teach. Literature, philosophy, things that actually matter. But Dad said teaching was for people who couldn't do, that it was a waste of talent." "So you stayed," I said. "So I stayed. Ran the company, made him proud, expanded operations, increased profits, and I hated every single day." Edward looked at each of us. "He died thinking I loved the business, thinking I was happy. I let him believe it because it was easier than admitting I'd wasted my life doing what he wanted instead of what I wanted. No one spoke. What was there to say? Finally, they all looked at me. "Your turn, Julian," Grace said gently. I took a breath, felt the weight of 36 years pressing down. "I met him once," I said. "When I was 8. My mom took me to a diner in Boston. She said someone wanted to see me. I didn't know who, but he was there, waiting. Richard, my father." "What happened?" Lillian asked. "He bought me hot chocolate, asked about school, told me I looked smart. We sat there for maybe 20 minutes. He didn't explain who he was. Didn't tell me why he'd left. Just talked. Like I was a stranger he was being polite to." "Did he say anything else?" Grace asked. "When we left, he put his hand on my shoulder and said, 'You're going to do great things, Julian. I can see it.' And then he walked away. I never saw him again." I felt my throat tighten. I spent my entire childhood thinking I wasn't good enough, that he left because of me, because I was broken or wrong or insufficient. I built my whole life trying to prove I didn't need him, that I could make it on my own. I looked around the table. And now he's dead, and I still don't know why he left, or why he stayed away, or why, after all these years, he brought me back. Maybe that's why he did this," Grace said softly, reaching across the table to put her hand on mine. "To tell you, to tell all of us." "He's dead," I said. "How's he going to tell us anything?" "Maybe through the tasks," she said. "Maybe each one reveals a piece of him." I wanted to believe that, but it felt too neat, too convenient. We spent the rest of day 1 in an uneasy détente. Lillian returned to her room to take work calls. Edward disappeared to the boathouse, Grace, painted on the terrace. And I walked the grounds, trying to process everything. By evening, we reconvened for dinner. Catherine joined us, silent and pale. "Did you know?" I asked her. "About me?" Catherine's hands trembled on her wine glass. "Not until 5 years ago. Richard told me one night after too much scotch. Said he'd had a son before we married. That he'd made a mistake leaving you. That he'd tried to reconnect, but your mother refused." "My mother refused?" I said sharply. "That's what he told me," Catherine said. "I don't know if it was true. Richard, he was complicated. He wanted to be a good man, but he was also proud. And he didn't handle rejection well. So he gave up," I said bitterly. "Or he convinced himself it was for the best," Catherine said. "I don't know. I didn't ask. We had our own children by then, our own life, and I was afraid of what digging into the past might uncover." "Afraid of what?" Edward asked. Catherine looked at him. "Afraid that the man I married wasn't who I thought he was." Day 2's envelope. The next morning, Grace opened it. Day 2, the forgiveness exercise. Choose one person at this table, living or dead, and write them a letter forgiving them for something. Read it aloud by midnight. Forgiveness, even unearned, is freedom. Edward crumpled his napkin. "I'm not doing this." "Yes, you are," Lillian said sharply. "Unless you want to forfeit $12 million because you're too proud to write a letter?" "It's not about pride." "It's exactly about pride," Lillian interrupted. "Dad knew that. That's why he designed this task." "You don't have to forgive him," Grace said to Edward. "Forgive someone else. Forgive yourself." We spent the day writing, alone in our rooms, struggling with words and wounds. By evening, we gathered in the library. One by one, we read. Grace went first. "Dear Dad, I forgive you for not understanding me. for thinking art was frivolous, for wanting me to be practical instead of passionate. I forgive you for the fights, for the silence, for the 5 years we lost. But more than that, I forgive you for being human, for being flawed, for loving me in the only way you knew how. I wish you were here so I could tell you this in person. But maybe you already know. Love, Grace. She was crying by the end. So was Catherine. Lillian. Dear Dad, I forgive you for not coming to my graduation, for dismissing my career, for making me feel like I had to choose between your love and my dreams. I forgive you for being distant, for being hard, for making me earn every scrap of approval. And I forgive you for almost dying before you finally admitted I'd made the right choice. I wish I'd been brave enough to say this while you were alive, but I'm saying it now. Lillian. Edward. Dear Dad, I don't forgive you. I know that's not what you wanted to hear, but I can't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. You took my life and bent it to your will. You made me into something I never wanted to be, and I let you because I was too afraid to disappoint you. But I'm not writing this to you. I'm writing to myself. Edward, I forgive you for being weak, for staying, for wasting years trying to be someone else. It's not too late to change. And I'm going to. Edward. The room was silent when he finished. My turn. I unfolded my letter. My hands were shaking. Dear Mom, I forgive you for never telling me the truth about Dad, for letting me grow up thinking he didn't want me, for protecting me from a pain I felt anyway. I forgive you for refusing his attempts to reconnect, if that's true. And if it's not, I forgive you for whatever reasons you had. I forgive you for forgetting me, for the Alzheimer's that's stealing you piece by piece, for the fact that the last time I visited, you didn't know my name. I forgive you for being human, for doing your best in an impossible situation. And I'm sorry I walked away. I'm sorry I didn't visit more. I'm sorry I let my anger keep me from loving you the way you deserved. Julian. When I finished, I couldn't look at anyone. Grace moved her chair closer, put her arm around me. I let her. Day 3. The sacrifice. Each of you will give up something valuable, not money. Something personal. Something that matters. Place it in the wooden box in the library. You will not get it back. Sacrifice binds us in ways possession never can. This is barbaric, Edward said. This is meaningful, Grace countered. He wants us to let go, to prove we can. By evening, we stood around the wooden box, ornate, locked, ancient-looking. Grace went first. She placed her father's paintbrushes in the box, the set he'd bought her when she was 10, before things got complicated. These were the last gift he gave me that I actually loved, she said. Before the expectations, before the disappointment. They reminded me he loved me once. Lillian placed her med school diploma in the box. This represents 15 years of distance between us. I kept it as proof I didn't need him, but maybe I don't need proof anymore. Edward placed a book in the box, leather-bound, old. Walden, he said. Thoreau, Dad gave it to me when I was 12, said it was about a man who built his own life on his own terms. Then, he spent the next 20 years making sure I did the opposite. He closed the box lid. I don't need the irony anymore. I was last. I pulled out the photograph, the one from my room, me and Richard. This is the only photo I have of him and me together. It's the only proof he was ever part of my life. I placed it in the box. But maybe I don't need proof. Maybe I just need to accept what was and move forward. Margaret appeared with a key. locked the box. As per Richard's instructions, this box will be sealed and stored. None of you will ever see these items again. Something about that felt final, like we'd actually let go of something. Day 4. This one was different. Heavier. Grace opened the envelope with shaking hands. The secret. There is a secret about me that one of you knows. A secret that explains everything. Reveal it by midnight. If no one speaks, the inheritance is void. Trust is built on truth, no matter how painful. We sat in silence for hours. Accusations flew. Lillian, you worked at the hospital. Did he tell you something medical? Edward demanded. If he did, it's protected by HIPAA, Lillian shot back. Grace, you talked to him 3 months ago. What did he say? I asked. He said he was proud of me, that's it. Someone knows something, Edward insisted. Someone's hiding the secret. At 11:30 p.m., we were still arguing. Desperate, angry. And then Catherine stood up. I know the secret, she said quietly. Everyone stopped, turned to her. I know why Richard left you, Julian, and why he kept his distance from all of you. Tell us, Lillian said. Catherine's voice was barely audible. Richard had another child, before any of you, before Julian's mother, before me. A daughter. Her name was Sophie. She died when she was 6, car accident. Richard was driving. The room went silent. He blamed himself, Catherine continued. Spent years in therapy trying to process it. But he couldn't. He was terrified of losing another child. So he left Julian's mother rather than risk getting close. And he kept emotional distance from all of you. Lillian, Edward, Grace, because love meant the possibility of loss. He told you this? Lillian whispered. On our wedding night, Catherine said. He was drunk, said he loved me but he'd never be fully present because part of him died with Sophie. I thought I could change him. I couldn't. Grace was crying. He was afraid. That's why he pushed us away. It doesn't excuse anything, I said, my voice harder than I intended. Fear doesn't justify abandonment. No, Catherine agreed. But maybe it explains it, and maybe that's enough. Exit 4, the boathouse day 5. The envelope was different, thick, cream-colored, with an old key taped to the front. Grace opened it with trembling fingers. Go to the boathouse, use the key. Inside, you'll find the truth about why I brought you all here. The truth isn't always comfortable, but it's always necessary. Love, Dad. We walked to the boathouse together, down a steep path lined with wild roses, past weathered stone walls covered in ivy, to a small building at the water's edge. The key fit an old brass padlock. Inside, a single room, a desk covered in dust, and 4 folders, each labeled with our names in Richard's handwriting. What is this? Edward asked. Open them, Lillian said. I picked up my folder. Inside, letters, dozens of them. From Richard to my mother, dated across years. Dear Margot, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need you to understand. I left because I was afraid. Afraid of failing Julian the way I failed Sophie. Please, let me be part of his life. I'll do whatever it takes. Another letter, 2 years later. Margot, Julian is 7 now. I've missed 7 years. Please reconsider. I've changed. I'm better. I want to know him. And another. I know you've moved. I found your new address. I'm not stalking you. I just want one chance. One meeting. Please. My mother's responses were brief, cold. Richard, stay away from us. Julian doesn't need a father who'll leave again. And later, stop writing, stop calling. If you contact us again, I'll get a restraining order. I sat down hard in a dusty chair. He tried, Grace said, reading over my shoulder. For years. He tried. She refused, I said, the words like ash in my mouth. She told me he abandoned us. She lied. Maybe she was protecting you, Lillian said gently. From what? From having a father? From knowing someone wanted me? I felt rage building. At my mother, at Richard, at the years lost. Lillian's folder contained letters too. Letters from Richard to her. Never sent. Dear Lillian, I was wrong. Medicine is your calling. I see that now. I'm sorry I didn't support you. I'm proud of the doctor you've become. Another, I came to the hospital today. Watched you from the cafeteria. You were talking to a patient's family. So gentle, so competent. Catherine says I should tell you I'm proud, but I don't know how. He wrote these and never sent them, Lillian said, voice breaking. He was proud. He just couldn't say it. Edward's folder, a deed to a small bookshop in Cambridge. Purchased in Edward's name 2 months before Richard died. And a letter. Edward, I know you hate Whitmore shipping. I've always known. You stayed because you thought I needed you to, but I don't. I need you to be happy. This bookshop is yours, paid in full. No strings. Start teaching. Start living. You've wasted enough time being who I wanted you to be. Dad, Edward stared at the deed. He bought me a bookshop. He gave you permission, Grace said, to leave. Grace's folder, architectural blueprints, for an art gallery in Boston's South End. Funded and registered in Grace's name. Grace, your next show deserves a real space. I'm giving you this. Not to control you, but to support the artist you already are. I've been going to your shows for years, anonymously. Buying paintings, donating them to museums. I wanted you to succeed on your own terms. But I also wanted you to know I believed in you. I'm sorry it took me so long to say it. Dad. Grace collapsed into a chair, sobbing. We sat in the boathouse for a long time. 4 people who'd thought they knew their father, realizing they'd only known pieces of him. He loved us, Grace said finally. In his broken way. He loved us. Love isn't enough, I said bitterly. Love doesn't erase 36 years of absence. No, Lillian agreed. But maybe understanding does. He was afraid. He was damaged. But he tried. In the end, he tried. It's not enough, I repeated. Maybe not, Edward said. But it's something. Ached 5. The choice day 6. The final envelope sat on the breakfast table like a judge's verdict. No one wanted to open it. Finally, Lillian did. You've completed the tasks. You've learned the truths. Now you have a choice. The inheritance is yours, divided equally among the 4 of you. But only if you agree to one final condition. You must stay in each other's lives. Not for obligation, not for money, but because you choose to. If you can't promise that, honestly, genuinely promise it, walk away. The money isn't worth the loneliness. Love, Dad. Silence. I can't promise that, I said immediately. Everyone turned to look at me. I can't promise I'll be in your lives. I don't know you. We've had 1 week together. 1 week of manipulative tasks designed to make us bond. That's not family. That's a psychology experiment. Julian, Grace started. No, I'm sorry, but no. I'm not going to promise something I can't deliver just to get money. That's exactly what he wanted, to manipulate us into being the family he failed to create. So you'll walk away, Edward said. And we all lose everything. I'll walk away because I don't make promises I can't keep. Then let us change your mind, Lillian said. You can't. Try me, Lillian said. She stood up, walked around the table, sat across from me. Julian, I know this is hard. I know 1 week isn't enough to build trust, but it's a start. And maybe that's all Dad wanted. Not perfection, just a chance. A chance at what? At family, at connection, at not being alone. Lillian's voice cracked. I'm 42 years old. I have a career I love and colleagues I respect. But I don't have family. Edward and Grace and we're polite. We see each other at holidays. But we're not close. We never have been. That's not my problem, I said. No, but it could be your opportunity. We're all lonely, Julian. All of us. And maybe, just maybe, we could be less lonely together. I have a life in Chicago, a girlfriend, a job, friends. And how close are those friends? Grace asked quietly. How many of them know about your childhood? About your mom? About the fact that you've spent your entire life running from the past? That's not, it's true. Grace interrupted. I can see it. You're terrified of connection because connection means vulnerability. And vulnerability means someone can hurt you the way your father hurt you. Don't psychoanalyze me. Then stop pretending you don't want this, Grace shot back. You flew across the country for a man you claimed you didn't care about. You spent a week doing emotionally exhausting tasks. You sacrificed the only photo you had of him. You don't do that if you don't care. I opened my mouth, closed it, because she was right. I don't know how to be a brother, I admitted finally. I don't know how to be part of a family. None of us do, Edward said. But we can figure it out, together. And if I screw it up? If I disappoint you? Then you disappoint us, Lillian said. And we move forward anyway. That's what family does. I looked around the table, at these 3 people who were strangers a week ago, who'd become something more, something fragile, but real. I'm gonna mess this up, I said. We all will, Grace said. But that's okay. I need time to think, I said. You have until midnight, Lillian said. I spent the day walking, miles of coastline, hours of thinking, called Tess. So what are you going to do? She asked. I don't know. Liar, you're just scared to admit it. They want me to promise I'll stay in their lives, but I don't know if I can. Because you don't want to, or because you're afraid they'll leave like your father did. Direct hit. Both, I admitted. Julian, you're the bravest person I know. You built a life from nothing. You made yourself into someone extraordinary. But you're also the loneliest person I know. And maybe this is your chance to stop being so alone. What if it doesn't work out? Then it doesn't work out. But at least you tried. At 11:45 p.m., I walked back into the house. They were all in the library, waiting. I'm in, I said. In? Lillian asked. I'll stay in your lives. I'll try. I can't promise I'll be good at it. I can't promise I won't disappoint you. But I'll try. Grace burst into tears. Lillian smiled. Even Edward looked relieved. Then it's unanimous, Lillian said. Margaret appeared in the doorway. Have you all decided? Yes, Lillian said. We accept, all of us. Margaret smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from her. Then the estate is yours, divided equally. Richard would be proud. I hope so, I said. Act 6, The Legacy. 6 months later, I stood in a bookshop in Harvard Square. Edward's bookshop. Shelves lined with used books, a coffee bar in the corner, students and professors browsing, and Edward behind the counter, looking happier than I'd ever seen him. How's business? I asked. Terrible, he said, grinning. I lose money every month. Best decision I ever made. You quit Whitmore Shipping? Sold my shares to a management buyout firm. Used the money to renovate this place and fund a teaching fellowship at Boston College. I'm teaching 2 philosophy classes this semester. How does it feel?" "Like I can finally breathe," Edward said. Grace's gallery opened in Boston's South End a month later. Clean white walls, natural light. Her paintings, bold, colorful, alive, filling every space. The opening night was packed. Critics, collectors, art students. Grace wore paint-stained jeans and a blazer, looking perfectly herself. "Sold out," she told me, eyes shining. 12 paintings, all sold. I can't believe it." "I can," I said. "They're beautiful." "Dad's here," she said quietly, pointing to a corner. "I mean, in spirit, I hung one painting that's not for sale. I painted it for him, called it Forgiveness." I looked at it. Abstract, red and gold and blue. Pain and hope tangled together. "He would have loved it," I said. "I hope so." Lillian threw a dinner party at Whitmore House 3 months after the inheritance was settled. All of us there, me, Edward, Grace, Catherine, and for the first time, I brought Tess. "So this is the infamous family," Tess said. "Infamous is one word for it," Edward said. "Dysfunctional is another," Grace added, laughing. We ate dinner on the terrace overlooking the ocean. Lillian told stories about hospital life. Edward talked about his students. Grace showed us sketches for her next show. And I talked about Chicago, my work, the life I was still building. It wasn't perfect. We argued. We disagreed. Edward and I got into a heated debate about capitalism versus ethical business. Grace and Lillian bickered about art versus science. But it was real, and it was family. One evening, I found another letter, hidden in the library desk. Grace found it while looking for stationery. "Julian," she called, "come here." It was addressed to all of us, in Richard's handwriting, my children. If you're reading this, you made it through. You chose each other. That's all I ever wanted. I know I wasn't a good father. I was distant, difficult, damaged. I let fear control me. I let the past dictate the present. And I wasted years that I can never get back. But I'm not sorry for bringing you together. I'm not sorry for forcing you to see each other, to know each other, to become the family I never gave you. Julian, I know you'll struggle with this. You've spent your life protecting yourself from abandonment. But these people, your siblings, they won't abandon you. Give them a chance. Lillian, you were right. Medicine is your calling. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. Edward, you're free now. Teach, write, live. You've earned it. Grace, you were always the bravest. Keep painting, keep creating, keep being exactly who you are. I love you all. I always did. I just didn't know how to show it. Dad. Grace handed me the letter. He loved you, Julian. He just didn't know how to show it. I know, I said. And I did. 1 year after the will reading, I moved back to Boston. Not to Whitmore House. I kept my own place in the city, but close enough. Close enough for Sunday dinners. Close enough for birthdays. Close enough for bad days when I needed someone who understood. Tess moved with me. She got a job at the Boston Globe. We talked about marriage, about kids, about building something permanent. Are you happy? She asked one night. I think so, I said. Is that allowed? It's required, she said, kissing me. I visited my mother every month. She didn't remember me most days. But sometimes, rarely, she'd smile and say my name. And I'd tell her about the family I'd found, the siblings I had, the life I was building. I don't know if she understood, but I needed to say it anyway. Richard Whitmore didn't leave me an inheritance of money. He left me something more valuable, a family. It wasn't the family I'd wanted, wasn't the family I'd imagined, but it was mine. And that's a legacy worth keeping. Some nights, I stand on the terrace at Whitmore House and watch the ocean. And I think about the man who built all this, who was broken and brilliant and flawed, who loved imperfectly but tried anyway. And I forgive him. Not because he earned it, but because holding on to anger was exhausting, and I was tired of being alone. So I let it go. The rage, the resentment, the years lost. And I chose what he wanted us to choose. Family. Connection. Each other. One careful choice at a time.